Hey everybody, welcome to the Black Sheep Props channel. I'm Steve and I'm here to teach you the tips, tools, techniques, and materials for building your very own super cool EVA foam props. Now if you're returning to the channel, thanks for digging us. Glad you came back. This is going to be a good build. We're going to have a good time. And if you're new to the channel, thanks for deciding to check us out. I think you're going to like it. We're going to go through a great build together. But enough chit chat and enough pleasantries. Without further ado, we'd like to introduce you to the Black Sheep Props channel's newest member of the family, the Knight Helmet. Very cool build. Looks like banged up, weathered, distressed steel. We've got divots and dents in it from obviously flying stones from slingshots and catapults. We've got gouges from axes and swords that are deflecting off of shields and hitting them in the head. This is not the helmet of the Knight's water boy. This is the helmet of a dude who has taken it on the head in action, and this is the helmet we're going to build. So, if you want your very own banged up, dented, war-torn Knight helmet, this episode, Making an EVA Foam Knight Helmet, Part 1 is going to go step by step through how to build it so that you get the props you deserve. Okay, here are the pieces for our Knight helmet. We've transferred our paper templates over to Bristol board. So what we have here is we have the lower front half of the helmet, and there's the bottom of the two eye holes. Here's the back bottom half of the helmet. So this is the front half. It'll wrap all the way around to the back and reconnect over on this side, making the brown bottom of the helmet. This curved piece is going to roll up and become the top half of the helmet. And what that's called is a truncated cone. So there's a little geometry for you. And the way you get this shape, this is very easy. You can go online anywhere, and all you have to do is put in the 3 coordinates that you need. You need the diameter of the lowest part of the cone, you need the smaller diameter for the top part of the cone, and then you need the height. And that's it. Those 3 numbers you feed into a ton of free online calculators that will do a truncated cone for you. And then when you put those 3 measurements in, it'll spit out a PDF for you in exactly the shape you need, so that when you roll it up and you attach it together, it's going to be a tapered cone for the top half of the helmet. This is going to be part of the strip that runs around the top of the helmet, and it's going to go right over the eye openings like that. So this is going to be the thin raised metal piece that's going to wrap all the way around the center of the helmet where the eye holes are. This is the back portion of that, which is going to wrap around the back of the helmet. It's going to come off of this eye piece, wrap around the back of the helmet. So here's the front of our lower front of our helmet, lower back of our helmet, and then this piece is going to be the thin metal strip that's going to wrap right down the front of the Knight helmet like this. That's it. Pretty simple. Once you've measured around your head, around your nose, so that you've got the widest diameter, then you know how long this whole piece has to be to wrap around your face and connect to the back without smushing your nose in. And then after you do that and you round this together and you seal it, then you're going to be able to measure across the circle to get the bottom diameter for your top half, for your truncated cone. And it's that simple. It's going to make a lot more sense when we start cutting it apart and gluing it together. This sounded a little odd at the moment, but this will all look good once we get down. Okay, so we're going to start with a regular piece of typical EVA foam floor mat. You see these in preschools, you see these in gyms, you see these everywhere. You can buy this cheap, and you can buy this at any hardware store, at Home Depot or Lowe's, and you've seen this before. It comes with the puzzle piece edges so you can attach them together. And this has a smooth side, but when you flip it over, you can see there it's got a texture on it. And that's not the side we use to work with, because contact cement doesn't stick great on this side. But in some episodes coming up, we'll look at how we can use this by dremeling off the surface and getting to the raw foam underneath. But for what we're doing for the helmet, this will be on the inside that you won't see, and the regular foam is going to be used on the outside for the helmet. So we're going to transfer our paper templates over to our foam floor mats, and we're going to start cutting from there. Oh, by the way, this is 1/2 inch thick floor mat foam, which is perfect for building helmets. So we're going to start transferring our pattern over to the foam next. Okay, so now we're going to take our Bristol template. We're going to trace around it. Remember, we talked about using Bristol for templates. That way it's a little bit stiffer and it doesn't flop around when you're trying to trace out your template. And even though you have some weights in the middle of it, it doesn't hurt to just keep your finger near the edge as well. Just gives it a little bit of extra stability when you're tracing around it. Okay, we transferred some of our templates over to the 1/2 inch floor mat foam because we need the thicker foam for the outside of the helmet, but now we're going to transfer these templates to the thinner foam, to the 2mm foam, because these are supposed to look like they're thin steel bands that are going to wrap around the helmet, and then this thin steel nose piece is going to come right through the center of the thin metal strips that go around the eyes, and it needs to look like it's bending over it, like when you've hammered and bent metal over other metal. So we're going to use a thin foam for that. Okay, what we're going to do first is we're going to cut this long curve, and since it's a long smooth cut, we're going to use our box cutter. So all we need to do is we need to come over to the edge, we need to saw through, we need to keep our blade standing straight up at a 90-degree angle so that the cut on the bottom is completely 90 degrees, right through, and look at that. Since we had a nice sharp blade, we've got a super nice smooth cut. And now we're going to use our metal ruler. We're going to cut our straight lines with our straight edge metal ruler. And we'll slide through, nice sharp cut. Remember to always take your time. Don't rush past your hand, because if you jump the tracks, guess what's getting hit? That's right, blade. Now, because we have a lot of corners here, I'm going to use the X-Acto knife to cut the sharp corners. So what we'll do is we'll cut along these straight edges with our ruler, our long ruler. So I'm lined up across all 3 of those lines. Don't tilt the blade or you'll get a bevel cut. So these little areas we're going to cut out with the X-Acto knife. The rest of the bottom portion of the helmet is all straight cuts or long curves, so we're going to go back to our box cutter and our metal edge. And you just nice and smooth, go right through your foam, holding the knife steady and putting a lot of pressure on the metal ruler to hold it down so the metal ruler doesn't shift when you're in the middle of cutting. Now this line has a slight curve to it, so what we're going to do is what we've been doing so far, and that's we're just going to come in, start at the edge, making sure our knife is on a 90-degree angle, and we're going to go nice and slow and smooth. We're going to follow the curve around piece 1 and piece 2 of the lower half of the helmet. Okay, so what we're going to do to make it easier to handle is we're going to cut some of this foam off. So I'm just going to go right around the edge like that. Now we've got it down to a piece that's much easier to handle as we're cutting. When you do a truncated cone, you can't do a 90-degree cut on the bottom and the top, or when you roll it up, the bottom will be at a funky angle and it won't sit flat. And we'll do the cut and then we'll show you what we were talking about and you'll understand then. So what we need to do is we need to come in and we need to cut both of these cuts on a bevel, which means we're not going to have our knife at a 90-degree angle. We're going to slightly tilt it so we get a bevel cut. So we're going to start at the top side. We're going to tilt our knife on a bevel, and we're going to go right around with the knife slightly tilted outward, as you can see. That's going to give us a nice bevel cut. Okay, it's slightly beveled so that when we roll the truncated cone up and we attach it together, this bottom edge will be flat. See that? Okay, now dig this. You roll this bad boy up and we're gonna glue it together, and when we glue it together, the bottom's gonna be flat. It's gonna sit flat down. Super cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to create these rows of breathing holes on the front of the helmet. And we're going to do that by using our trusty brass tubing that we're going to sharpen up, and we're going to spin it around, and we're going to get all of our holes, our perfectly symmetrical holes cut for our breathing holes on the front of our helmet. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the front of our helmet. This is where the rows of holes are going to go. We're going to get a ruler out, we're going to measure, and we're going to plot out where our holes go. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, a row of 4 on that side of the nose strip, and a row of 1, 2, 3, 4 on that side. And then we just plot it out where the other ones are going to go. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it was very simple. We just set ourselves up a nice grid and we just made our points. Now we know exactly where we're going to come in. Breathing hole, breathing hole, breathing hole. Very simple. Okay, now we're going to take our brass tube. We've sharpened the end with an X-Acto knife. We're going to take it, we're going to line it up right on our mark with our first hole. We're going to spin back and forth a bunch of times, and we're going to go right through our foam. Let me pull this out. Super perfect hole. I mean perfect. Thanks to the good old brass tube. Okay, and that's it. After we plotted out our grid for our breathing holes, there we are. Simply used our brass tube, sharpened the ends, went one hole at a time, and it's that simple. With a sharp brass tube, you can cut out perfect circles and perfect look for the breathing holes. Okay, so now what we're going to do next is we're going to take our two bottom halves of the helmet, the front half and the back half, and we're going to flip them around, and we're going to heat them up with the heat gun so that we can curl our foam helmet. Using the heat gun on it, you don't want to use the heat gun on your cutting mat because you'll warp your cutting mat and you'll ruin it. So if you can get a piece of wood or a couple of 2x4s, whatever you need, that way you can do the heating on it and the wood will absorb the heat and you won't trash your cutting board. So we're going to do that next. We're going to heat gun and curve our helmet pieces. So we heat it up, we get it going. What we're going to do is we're literally going to just go back and forth, and then we're going to take it and we're going to roll it up like this. And then what's going to happen is after you've held it for a little bit and you let it go, if you notice, it has a natural curve on it now. And then what you can also do is you can stand it up on its edge like this, and you can use the heat gun horizontally so you're not pointing it down at the table. That way you can keep it in a bent shape, and while it's in a bent shape, also just be careful not to point it at your hand. Make sure it's pointed at the foam and the wood. That way you have a nice curve going on it. All right, and also be careful. Do not touch that because, woo, that's a bad boy right there. That'll burn your skin right off. So you just hold it for a little bit like that, and it cools. And then as it cools, look at that, a nice curve. That's just enough curve you need. That way it takes all the strength out of it so it's not fighting against you when you go to try to glue it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do that for the bottom back half of the helmet as well. Okay, and that should be enough. Careful not to touch that. And you just hold it there as it's cooling off. We can stand it up and do it if you want, or you can lay it flat as long as you keep it curved. Okay, so we've got the lower front part of our helmet, and we've got the lower back part of our helmet. So what we're going to do is, let me show you this from above, is we're going to, this is why we heated it up. We bent it, so now we're going to be able to glue these edges on both pieces. We're going to attach it, and it's going to make the round bottom half of our helmet. So now what we're going to do is, we've got our glue pot out. We're going to take some glue, and we're going to rub it along the edge, and you try to get it as smooth as you possibly can. And you get a little more contact cement. We're going to rub on this side because we're going to be attaching these ends together. And we're going to attach it here, and it's going to twist around and attach there. Line it up very carefully, get the edge stuck down, and then we're going to line the seam up very carefully like so. And as we go through it, we're going to continue lining the seam up so it's nice and flush right there. I'm going to flip it around this way for you. There. Now we're going to roll it around to the other side, make sure it's flush. And look at that, it's going down beautiful, perfectly lined up. Very cool. It's starting to become a night helmet. Okay, now we have the top half of our helmet on our wood boards, just so that we protect our cutting board. So we're going to set it on top. We're going to get our heat gun going, and again, be super careful with this thing, because once it gets going, wham, it's hotter than Venus, and that's hot. Back and forth. And then when you get over to this side, slide it over the wood so that whatever you're heating is completely over the wood. Okay, now what we do is we just roll this up like this. So we're just going to hold this for a little bit as it cools off. Now when we go to glue it together, it's not going to fight us. Okay, so next we're going to bring out our glue pot. We just hold this up, we just rub it with the side of the brush. There we go. That's simple. So now, both ends are a little bit shiny, see that? There you go. That tells you that they're wet. A couple more minutes and pow. Stick this bad boy together just like that. Boop. And then we got the top of our helmet ready to go. So far so good, very simple. You can do this, and nothing about this is difficult. You can totally do this. Okay, now we're going to take our contact cement. We're going to do the bottom edge of the top half of our helmet. Okay, now this is all covered. We're going to move this out of the way. We're going to bring this half of the helmet in, and we're going to cover the top edge of that. Okay, now the top edge of the bottom of our helmet is dry, and the bottom edge of the top of our helmet is dry. We're going to lay it down like this, stick the edge down nice and flush right there at the nose. So now this is attached right there. Perfect. You have to be careful, because now we've got contact cement on here. I'm going to keep my finger in here so it doesn't touch, and I'm going to keep the back lifted up, and I'm going to come over to this side, and I'm going to line it up. And now we're going to hold it up in the back. We're going to come over to this side. We're going to bring it down. We're going to make sure that it touches right on the edge, lined up perfectly, which it is. So we're going to spin it around. So see, we've got the front attached. We've got it attached right here. And we've got it attached right here. And I've got my finger in the middle so it won't touch. So now what we need to do is this, is we need to make sure this touches. All right, so now we're going to go slow, line your edge up, try to keep it apart in the middle so it doesn't touch. Slowly run your thumb along the seam just to keep it. There we go, and you can bend the foam, because see, the foam bends. See that? We're bending it. Look at that. It's going to go right together perfectly. Look at that. Right on the seam. Bam. Bam and bam. Okay, there we go. There it is, not bad. Making an EVA Foam Knight Helmet. Okay, that concludes making an EVA Foam Knight Helmet Part 1. Hope you dug it. If you did, give us a like, share it with a friend, or subscribe to this channel, and together we're gonna go step by step through more super cool builds so you get the props you deserve. See you next time.